Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Berachot, and we are on Daf Lamed Bet Amud Aleph, 10 lines up from the bottom of the Amud by 2 dots. Mibli Yecholet, and the learning of the month of Cheshvan of Amud Yomi has been dedicated by the Hami family. Leilui Nishmat Yosef ben Allegra Simcha bat Rachel, and Aliza Talia Sarah bat Chanoch Feivel, that their neshamot should have an aliyah. Amen.
Amen.
So we are discussing the tefillot of Moshe Rabbeinu, and now, as we mentioned, even though the Gemara doesn't really mention it, the Gemara kind of like seamlessly goes through the psukim by Moshe Rabbeinu, but really, as we mentioned, the account of Egel HaZahav had 3 different places in Chumash, twice in Shemot, and once in Dvarim, when the story is recounted again. And then there is the story of Moshe Rabbeinu by the Chet HaMeraglim, in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu also needed to be appeased with wanting to not let the Jews go in, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was appeased by tefillot of Moshe Rabbeinu to let them go. So says the pasuk, "Mibli yecholet Hashem," that Moshe Rabbeinu says in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the people of the world are going to say, Hashem couldn't bring them to Eretz Yisrael, and therefore Hashem killed them in the Midbar. The argument that Moshe Rabbeinu made to Hashem says, look at how the optics of this is going to be in front of Umot HaOlam. They don't know the details of what happened. What they see is you took them out of Mitzrayim and you killed them all in the first year in the Midbar. What are they going to say? What is it going to look like? You take your people out and then you slaughter them in the Midbar? You know what they're going to say? They're going to say Hashem was not strong enough and was afraid of the kings of Canaan, therefore he killed his people in the Midbar. Chilul Hashem 101. It's mamash the top level Chilul Hashem. That's the argument. He was the best lawyer, Moshe Rabbeinu, of Am Yisrael. So says the Gemara, first of all, why does it say Mibli Yecholet Hashem? Yecholet is Lashon Nekeva. Basic, at least on the surface level, it would sound like it's Lashon Nekeva. And the Gemara asks the question, why doesn't it say Mibeli Yachol Hashem? What the Yecholet Hashem? Right? It's female grammatically. Yecholet is female, not male. So says the Gemara. Usually we use, even though there's no, it's a gender neutral, but it's the Maaseh. We always use Lashon Zachar for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Gemara. Amar Belazar, Amar Moshe Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says no, Moshe Rabbeinu is actually hinting to what he's saying. He says, Ribono shel olam achshav yomru umot ha'olam. The world is going to see and say, Tashash kocho kenekeva. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu's power has been diminished like a nekeva. Ve'eno yachol latzil. And he cannot save his nation and take them all the way, basically deliver what he promised and take them to Canaan. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also is not a pushover. Hashem says, wait a second. I have made my mark on the history. Look at what I did to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians, the 10 Makot, the sea opening, right? All of that they've seen already. So they know I'm powerful. No worries. I'm going to kill the Jews and no problem. They have seen, all the nations have seen what have been done by Yam Suf. The Midrash tells us, and this is the Gemara here also is mashma. It sounds supporting that Midrash, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened the sea, it was not just by Yam Suf that the waters opened, but all the waters of the world opened. And people were wondering what happened over here. And that was the PR of the Jews coming out of Mitzrayim. That when they said we saw and we heard what happened by Yetziat Mitzrayim and by the Yam Suf, the opening of the sea was something that everybody to some extent experienced. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Halo kvar ra'u nisim v'gevurot she'asiti lahem al hayam." Everyone has seen what I did by Yam Suf. Amar Lefan, what would you say to that? Like, you need to be a very good lawyer. He says like this. He says, no. Ribono shel olam, adayin yesh lahem lomar. You know what they're gonna say? They're gonna say, lemelech echad yachol la'amod. He says, yeah. When you only have Paro, as big as Paro was, and as great as the empire of Egypt was back then at the time, the greatest empire of all of the time, but Lemaaseh, at the end of the day, is only one kingdom. So one king HaKadosh Baruch Hu could battle with. He could take on one. But Lishloshim ve'echad melachim, Eretz Canaan had, it was a composition of 31 countries within one country. There were 31 kings. It says 31 kings, eno yachol la'amod. Maybe that's what they're going to say. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Minash chazar HaKadosh Baruch Hu behoda lo leMoshe. How do we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with this last argument of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he actually said, you're right, and therefore I'm going to change my gezerah because of your tefillah? Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha. Hashem said, I will retract the gezerah and I forgive them. It doesn't say salachti. So salachti kidvarecha. I forgive them like your words. It doesn't say bidvarecha. It doesn't say because of your words. It says kidvarecha, like your words. What do you mean kidvarecha, like your words? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Ishmael, kidvarecha tidim umot ha'olam lomar. You are correct. Like those words that you said are going to be said and argued by the umot ha'olam. Kidvarecha, like your words. Your words were correct. They're going to say that if I don't take the Jews to Eretz Yisrael, so therefore, salachti, I forgive them. And so Gemara ends, Ashrei Talmid Sherabo Modelo. Fortunate is the Talmid that his Rebbe agrees with him and changes his mind because of the Talmid.
Does this suggest that we have to justify every tefillah we ask for, every request we make? You know, in the Shmoneh Esrei it says, give us refuah shlema, give us parnasa tova, give us X, give us Y. There's no analysis. This is a very sophisticated way of speaking to Hashem.
Listen, Moshe Rabbeinu is more sophisticated than us, of course, and what has been codified in Tanakh, of course, is it has layers and layers of depth. You know, when we talk about this, the Midrash says that, you know, everything has thousands of layers. Really, every part of Torah has 600,000 layers. Every neshama of a Jew has an understanding of the Torah. So there are layers of depth, and especially knowing that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that's talking. These are the DNA of how the process of tefillah works. Is much more sophisticated than ours. And even our tefillah, we mentioned before, when we spoke about Shmuel HaKatan being the one instituting the 19th bracha of Lamidim and Oshim, we mentioned this from Nefesh HaChaim and from the Yabetz and others, that even that has so many layers of depth. We brought the Nefesh HaChaim and the Maran of Bet Yosef in the name of the Malach HaMagid, that there are all the kavanot of Ari HaKadosh and Nashash that are like a drop in the sea in front of the kavanot that Anshe Knesset HaGedolah had in mind for the text of tefillah that we have, of Shlomo Esrei that we have. So of course, we're talking about the highest of the levels over here. And the Gemara says, "Ulam chai ani neum Hashem." So afterwards, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Ulam chai ani ve'imale kevod Hashem et haaretz." Amar Rava, what is Hashem swearing to? In the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, he says, "Melamed she'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe, Moshe heitani bedvarecha." Chai ani is not just that Hashem is taking an oath, but he's saying, Chai ani, I am alive. You made me alive with your argument. What does that mean? It means, Rashi says, Chai ani, heitani bifnei haumot. That it would have been a tremendous chilul Hashem, as you argued, if I would have killed out all the Jews. The optics of it in front of the umot ha'olam would have been a tremendous chilul Hashem. So it's as if you made me alive. You made me strong and alive in front of the ummot. Great. Says the Gemara. Darash Rabbi Simlai. This is 4 lines up, in the middle of the line, by 2 dots. This is the structure of the tefillot. The tefillot that we daven, they follow a certain structure. The structure is, first you praise, then you ask, then you thank. And says the Gemara, we learn that also from Moshe Rabbeinu. Le'olam, always, yesader adam shivcho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You first organize the shevach, the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then you ask for what you need. You do that tefillah. Menalan, how do we know? Mi Moshe. Also from Moshe Rabbeinu. Dichtiv, as it says, Va'etchanan el Hashem ba'et hahi, that I davened, I begged, Hanina in front of Hashem ba'et hahi. But then he explains the way. This is the 515 times that Moshe Rabbeinu davened, right? Gimatria va'etchanan. And how did I daven? It says the structure, the wording that he had. He says, Hashem Elokim, Ata Hilota laharot et avdecha Hashem. First it says Hashem, and also Elokim, the power of Hashem, the compassion of Hashem. Ata Hilota laharot et avdecha et kotlecha v'yadcha chazaka. You started showing your servant your great, mighty hand, your wondrous, amazing greatness. That's not asking for anything. What is that? You're davening, but Hashem, just say, I begged Hashem. I asked him, please take me to Eretz Yisrael. Please take me to this son. Right? He doesn't start with that. It says, Hashem, you are Hashem Elokim. Elokim means you're powerful, almighty. You started showing me at Kotlecha, your greatness, your graciousness, your powerful hand. Asher miel bashamayim. Which power do we have? There's no power in the world besides you. Uba'ares asher yasek ma'asecha v'chikburotecha. Nobody could do what you do. All of that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying is not asking for anything. What is he doing? He's praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And only afterwards he says, Everana ve'er'eh et ha'ares hazot. Please let me pass through this land and see the land of Eretz Yisrael. Now, when the Gemara gives simanim, it's just for remembering this. The last parenthesis over here, Ma'asim staka korban kohen tanit min al barzel. That's just to tell us that these are concepts that we're going to compare in the tefillah, the value of different things, and each one of them is short. So therefore, the Gemara, people who remember all the orders of the Gemara, that's this, they make simanim, like the Gemara says in Eruvin Daf Nun Dalet. When you learn something, you remember it. When you learn with simanim, and then you remember it in that way, in a better way. So this is what it's also a musar. It's a commitment of knowing Gemara by heart, right? It's a commitment of it. And one of my friends just called me in the morning of Hoshana Rabbah. They're good friends back in East. They told me that he's giving a Habura to Baal Batim, in which everyone has to memorize the Shakla v'Tariyah of the Gemara. Everyone has to memorize. They're almost halfway through the first Pasachta that they're doing like that. And you have working individuals that they know the entire Gemara by heart, basically. That's to elevate our hasagot of what a person could be doing. The Shas Kohen, Rabbi Yehoshua Kohen, who wrote a Sefer Kerem Yehoshua, he has instructed people with instructions of how to memorize Gemarot. But this was something that was common and pretty normal to know the Gemarot by heart when it comes to Shakla v'Tariyah. And that's what we're going to be doing over here, going through small pieces of Gemara, comparing the greatness of different things. Amar Rab Elazar, top of Lamed Bet Amud Bet, Gedolat Tfilah yoter mima'asim tovim. Tfilah is even greater than ma'asim tovim, than good deeds. Why? She'en lecha gadol b'ma'asim tovim yoter mimoshe. You can't find someone greater in ma'asim tovim than Moshe Rabbeinu, who every act that he did was an act of chesed and ma'asim tovim. He gave us the Torah. He dealt with the tzibur for 40 years. And yet, afar piken, Lo ne'ena ela b'tfilah. He only was answered through his tefillah, not because of Masim Tovim. Shenemar, how do we know that? Because it says, Al Tosef Taper Elai. When he davened 515 times, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ravlach, Al Tosef Taper Elai od badavar hazeh. Don't talk to me anymore about this. And right away afterwards says, Ale Rosh HaPiska. Immediately afterwards, it says, go up and I will show you Eretz Yisrael. In other words, because of all of his Ma'asim Tovim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're not going to go and you're not going to see the land. Moshe Rabbeinu started davening after that for two things. One is, I should go physically to Eretz Yisrael, I should see the land. So he davened for two things, to see it and to enter it. Beforehand, he was supposed to not do any of them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tefillah accomplished mechsa. He accomplished half of it. That says, okay, because of the Tefillah, I'm going to show you the entire land of Eretz Yisrael, which Rashi brings from Chazal. They took him on top of the mountain and he showed him every detail of Eretz Yisrael, which is there's so much. This daf is so packed. And there's so much to talk about. What is seeing Eretz Yisrael? What does that do exactly? And this was not a regular seeing. This was, being able to see every detail of Eretz Yisrael from on top, which again is half of what he davened for. Whatever that means, whatever depth of seeing Eretz Yisrael means, that half, 50% of what he davened for came through even against an explicit gezerah that he should not see. So you see, tefillah is much greater than Ma'asim Tovim. What his Ma'asim Tovim could not accomplish, and the gezerah was made on him, despite all of his Ma'asim Tovim, the tefillah knocked out half of it. And by the way, when it says, Ravlach al Tosef taber elai od badavar hazeh, means don't daven again, because if you daven one more time, I have to let you go in, and I don't want that. So quiet, no more davening. So you see the power of tefillah, yes. Every time that you have tefillah and Masim Tovim, you're talking about the person davening, right? So it's always kind of on top of that. The Gemara is going to discuss the tefillah of tzaddik ben tzaddik versus the tefillah of a tzaddik ben rasha, and so on and so forth. We have spoken about this in past when we learned Masechet Ta'anit, but the Maseh, that is always intrinsically there. You're asking, intellectually a very good question, but what we're talking over here is that there are certain things that the person's Ma'asim Tovim would not do, and you only could accomplish them through the koach of tefillah. Says the Gemara, Amar Belazar Gedolah Ta'anit yoter min tzedakah. Ta'anit is greater than tzedakah. When you need something and you fast for it, then just giving tzedakah, which is tremendous. The Gemara says in Masechet Baba Batra Daf Tet and Daf Yud, tremendous things about tzedakah, including tzedakah tatzil mimavet. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah about Daniel Hanavi's comment to Nebuchadnezzar, that you could even put on hold even for someone like a goy, like Nebuchadnezzar, who destroyed the Beit HaMikdash and murdered and slaughtered so many people, that tzedakah could still shield him from Pura'anut and put it on hold and so on. But nevertheless, Gedolah Tanit, says the Gemara, Tanit is even greater than tzedakah. My tama, why? Because this one is hurting your guf. The other one is hurting your wallet. It's still big, right? There are people who their money is more special to them than their life, but because they spend their life gathering money that they're never going to spend, or they don't need necessarily, right? So that's the irony. But the Maaseh, when you put yourself out completely with your guf, is more profound than doing it with your money. Says the Gemara, Tefillah is even greater than the korbanot, which is very interesting because tefillah is b'makom korbanot, right? Keneged tmidin tiknu. But nowadays that we don't have korbanot, we do tefillah. But the Gemara says tefillah is even greater than the korbanot. Shenemar, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unhappy with the Jews in the very beginning of Navi Yeshaya, the Mamash in the very beginning, he says, Lama li rov zivchachem. Why do I need the tremendous amounts of zvachim and korbanot that you bring? And then only afterwards, this is Perek Aleph of Yeshaya, Pasuk Yud Aleph, and only afterwards, in Pasuk Tetvav, that he already has said, stop bringing korbanot, he says, ובפריסכם כפיכם עלים עיניי מכם. גם כי תרבו תפילה, אינני שומע. ידיכם דמים מלאו. It says, even when you daven, I'm not going to listen. So first it says korbanot, and then it says, even when you daven, I'm not going to listen. Which indicates, which one is greater? That tefillah is even greater than korbanot. It says, I don't want your korbanot, I even don't want your tefillah. Which when you word it like that, you're clearly indicating that tefillah is even more powerful than korbanot, which is tremendous. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, no, the end of that pasuk, this is picking up where that pasuk leaves, which the Gemara didn't quote the whole pasuk. The whole pasuk in Yeshaya Perek Aleph, pasuk Tetvav, is "Uparischem kapechem alim enai, gam ki tarbu tefillah eneni shomea." When you spread your hands in tefillah, alim enai, I'll cover my eyes. Gam ki tarbu tefillah, and even if you do a lot of tefillah, eneni shomea, which by the way, it indicates that even when you daven once and it doesn't get accepted, when you daven a lot, it's going to get accepted, which we're going to get to in just a few lines, right? So you have to know the Gemara is expanding on this pasuk without telling us that's expanding on this pasuk. An untrained eye sees this Gemara like throwing out different bits and pieces, but it's really expanding on this pasuk without quoting the whole pasuk. But if you know the whole pasuk in Yeshaya, then you know the Gemara is going to expand on this few lines. So says the Gemara, even if you daven a lot, I'm not going to listen. Why? Because your hands are filled with blood. You with me? Says the Gemara, that note. Kol kohen she'arag nefesh. If a kohen kills a person, this, by the way, is a she'elah that is very much nogeya, right? Unfortunately, in Eretz Yisrael, you have one of the highest levels of accidents, traffic accidents. And if the kohen, it's a she'elah, Haravadia writes at Shuban, if a kohen ran over a person and killed them, can he do Nesiat Kapayim ever again after that point? How about if the doctor, if the kohen is a doctor, right? The neurosurgeon, most of the operations you do, the guy doesn't survive. Or other surgeons, like someone died under your knife, basically. Can you do Nesiat Kapayim as a kohen afterwards? Right? It all starts from this Gemara. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Lazar it says, Kol kohen she'arag et hanefesh, lo yisa et kapav. A kohen that killed a person cannot do Nesiat Kapayim. Why? Because it says, Yedechem damim maleu. It says, when you raise your hands, Nesiat Kapayim, I'm going to close my eyes. So from here, what I say is because Yedechem damim maleu, those hands that have spilled blood, they cannot be raised to tefillah in front of me. Now, I know I left a cliffhanger for those cases. Not every case is considered a murder, right? If a doctor has the license to not to kill but to heal, and it happened to be that he did everything that he had to do, was not out of negligence, and just the guy didn't make it, that's not considered that he killed somebody necessarily. But if it was a driving accident and the guy got drunk and got over, behind the wheel and killed somebody, that's a serious question. Of course, has to be discussed. So says the Gemara, from the moment that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the gates of Tefillah were locked. Shenemar, Tefillot do not get accepted, do not go up. Shenemar, even if I scream and call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Satab Tefillah, Hashem has closed my Tefillah. Even though that the sha'arim of tefillah have been locked. By the way, you see the importance of tefillah b'tzibur, because we had the Gemara before, now linking the two Gemara together, that the tefillah of tzibur will never come back rekam, empty-handed. So you need that guarantee. You never want to daven alone at home, by minyan of kotel, right? Because that satam tefillati, the Gemara says it's almost impossible to get the tefillah in. But when you have tzibur, you have a koach of the tzibur. It's a haftacha from the Gemara that he never comes back empty-handed, right? So that's a tremendous thing. Says the Gemara, even though that sharet tefillah ninalu, even though that the gates of tefillah have been locked, sharet dim'a lo ninalu. The gates of tears have never ever been locked and closed. It's a famous saying. They say it in the name of Rabbi Nachum Mendel, the Kotzker Rebbe, the tremendous Kotzker Rebbe. They say it in name of other people as well. That it says basically gates that never close. What do you need gates for? Okay, well, gates is if you never close them. Imagine you have a door to the house, it's always open, ajar completely. So you have a door. So it says the Kotzker Rebbe, he says, no, not every dim'ah. When we say sharet dima'ot, we talk about sincere dim'ah. But people cry for narishkai, right? People cry for the non-sincere cries or cries for things that are garbage. That's not what tears are for. Tears are for sincere things. Whatever sincere thing you have, and you have so much emotions behind it that you start crying, but when you cry for garbage, or when the cry by itself is not sincere, then it's going to be locked. Says the Gemara, how do you know that the sharet dim'ah lo ninalu, that the gates of tears are never closed? Shenemar, the pasuk says, Shim'at filati Hashem, Hashem listen to my tefillah, v'shav'ati ha'azinan, please listen to my crying, to my calling out, shav'ah, but el dim'ati al techerash. But to my dim'ah, you cannot be quiet. It's not asking, but it's stating the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to be quiet in front of a person's tears. The Gemara also says this in Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Nun Tet Amud Aleph in 59a. Then the Gemara says a person should always be careful with the wife's emotions, because women, they are more emotional. It's much easier to hurt their feelings, and they will start crying. And when they cry, God should have mercy on the soul of the husband. That's basically what the Gemara says, right? And therefore you have to be careful. Which, by the way, means that you can't say, "Well, he's too emotional." Yes, they are, right? You have to be. It's our job to be careful with people who are extra emotional, even if they're men. They're men who are much more sensitive than other men, right? And you can't hurt someone, cause their hurt, and say, "Well, he's too emotional. He got hurt easily." The standards are not by the guy that hurts, but by the person that gets hurt. It's our job to be careful with other people's emotions. So that's because sharet dim'ah lo ninalu, because of this Gemara, the Gemara says you have to be extremely careful with your rebetzins. It says
if you cry alone at home.
It's a good question. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, it's could be more powerful than that, right? Because you see, they have the tefillah that comes from the heart. The Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippurim had to daven that even though that everyone is davening Morida Geshem, if there's one guy that's stuck on the way and says, "Hashem, please, no rain. I'm going to get stuck here in mud. And it's going to ruin my life." That tefillah that comes from heart could knock out the tefillah of the tzibur to the degree that you need Kohen Gadol to say. I'm not suggesting you should cry alone at home. Come cry in the tzibur, it's even better. Says the Gemara. Rava lo gazar tanita b'yom ha'de'iva. Rava would never make a fast day on a cloudy day. Why? Mishum shene'emar, because it says, Sakota be'anan lach ma'avor tefillah. That Hashem, you literally cover between you and us. You shield yourself from the tefillot with anan. So he said, it's like a siman. When you have that, we don't want to make a day of tefillah on a cloudy day, right? # London. Says the Gemara, Another Gemara about Churban Beit HaMikdash. From the day that Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, it's as if you have literally an iron wall between Hashem and Klal Yisrael, and it's much harder to connect. שנאמר as it is, ואתה קח לך מחבת ברזל, ונתת אותה קיר ברזל בינך ובין העיר. Hashem tells the Navi to make a siman, says put a brick there and put a iron vessel between yourself and between the people to show that I am dividing between myself and the Jews with chomat barzel, with a iron wall. Amar Rabbi Chanin, this is the first wider line. Amar Chanina, kol marich bitfilato et tfilato chozeret dekam. So you remember, we said we're going to come back to this because it says gam ki tarbut tefila eneni shomea. To me, it seems that this is why the Gemara expands on this, that if you do a lot of tefillah, ma'arich b'tfilato, you daven a long, nice Shemona Esrei, and tfilato chozeret dekam. The tefillah does not come back empty-handed, right? Gedolei Yisrael, they would daven long tefillot. Chazon Ish would daven for close to 20 minutes. Shozam Orbach would daven a 20-minute Shemona Esrei. Nowadays, for us, it's like 20 minutes. That's like the entire Shacharit plus half of Mincha, right? But that's not the way. When you want to daven a proper, even a regular person, just to pay attention to the words of Shemona Esrei, it takes you at least 7 minutes, right? So that's something to be mindful. Tefillah is a real avodah. It's powerful. So says the Gemara, when you daven a proper long Shemona Esrei, it's guaranteed doesn't come back empty-handed. Says the Gemara, Menalan. How do we know? Because of Moshe. Also from Moshe Rabbeinu. I davened to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it says afterwards, Uchtiv batre, Vashma Hashem Elai, Gam bepa'amahi. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu listened to me even in that time. Says the Gemara, Eni, is that true? והאמר רבי חייא בר אבא אמר רבי יוחנן, כל המעריך בתפילתו ומעיין בה, סוף בא לידי כאב לב. Rabbi Chia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, any person that elongates their tefillah, ma'arich b'tfilato u'ma'ayen ba, we're going to see what ma'ayen ba means, sof ba lidei kev lev. At the end, he's going to come to heartache. Shenemar, so it's not a good thing. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, tochelet memushacha machala lev. That a long waiting, tochelet, when you're hoping and you're davening long, memushacha, continuous, machala lev, is going to give you sickness. So it says Gemara, my takante, what is the takana? The takana is, the fixing is, yasok b'torah, you should learn Torah. You daven, but you should also learn Torah. The power of the Torah is what does it. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, ve'etz chaim ta'ava ba. Etz chaim, which is the reference to the Torah, is what's desired. Says the Gemara, ve'en etz chaim ela Torah. Etz chaim is a reference, direct reference to the Torah. Shenemar, as it says, etz chaim hina machazikim ba. Torah is the tree of life for those who hold on to it. So the Gemara, so now we have a kasha, because first the Gemara said you daven a long tefillah and it's good. Then the Gemara said if you daven a long tefillah, continuous tefillah is not good. So which one is it? Is it good? Is it not good? Says the Gemara lo kasha. It's not the question. One of them is when you are davening a long tefillah and u'me'ayen ba. Me'ayen ba means you're demanding from Hashem answers. See what happened? I davened the long tefillah. It's for sure going to be answers. For sure going to be answers. What happened? Right? That's not a good thing. If you daven long tefillah and then you just let it go, right? You're not asking Hashem what's happening. I daven and you didn't answer. You're not keeping cheshbon. You just daven proper tefillah and you go on with your life, right? Instead of looking back in life, you look always forward. I did my thing. I daven. Now life goes on. Now I have Amud Yomi to attend to. I have to do Chazara. I have Mishnah Berurah to learn. I have life. Instead of looking backwards always, that gets you, heartache. That gets you sick. That's not the right way of. That's not a right mahalech in life. You do your tefillah, you do your ishtadlut, and then you go on with life. Right? You're in the middle of a war, so to speak. Right? In the middle of a war, you never put down your gun and look back to see who is alive, who is not alive. You have to go on. So that's the right way. You daven a proper, long, good Shemona Esrei, and then you go to try to get your life together, do your ishtadlut, and go on with life. Says the Gemara. What do you do if you davened and it didn't happen? You know what we do? We give up. That's what we do. What does the Gemara say you should do? If you daven, if you see that you daven and it didn't happen, you go back, you start all over again, you daven again. As it says, Kavel Hashem, hope to Hashem, which is the lashon of tefillah. You see from the Gemara, we spoke about this on Rosh Hashanah, that you see the hope is the essence of tefillah. You never give up hope, right? Kavel Hashem, chazak v'yames libecha. You strengthen yourself again. If it didn't work, v'kavel Hashem, you daven again. You have to constantly be strengthening yourself and davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every tefillah that the person utters at every time is a different tefillah. There have been never in the history of the world two identical tefillot uttered, ever. Every tefillah is different. Even your tefillah, your own tefillah, it depends on the day, at the time of the day, the calendar, everything that's happening spiritually around you, yourself, your kavanah. So it didn't happen the first time, you do it the second time, you do it the 100th time, you do it the 515th time. And if Hashem wouldn't stop, Moshe Rabbeinu would be going on. Says the Gemara. From that, you see a famous Gemara, tremendously powerful. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan. That's the next Gemara, right? That's the next Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned, there are four things that need constant chizuk. If you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says the four things that need chizuk, you need to strengthen yourself every single day with all of your power. That you need constant strengthening with all of your might. That means you need daily reminders and exercise on this. You have to learn musar about it, you have to think about it, contemplate on these four things, and be vigilant and on top of them every day. Two elements of chizuk. It has to be constant and consistent, and it has to be with all of your power. It's not that you just put it in your checklist and say, okay, I thought about this today. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually strategize to strengthen yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. Gemara says it. What are those four things? So now one of them you could guess because we're just coming off of that by tefillah. But the actual four we will see tomorrow morning.
That was a cliffhanger.